This is how I helped this top 1% student transition from low downforce cars to high downforce cars and find over a second per lap in what's already high-level driving standards. How's it going, man?
Doing good, excited, a little nervous actually.
Kevin is a Formula Ford 1600 expert, and now it's time to master the Formula 4, where downforce starts making a difference in how you should drive these cars.
Did a couple of races, a couple seconds off actually in Road America, so I need to find out what's happening.
I'm surprised that you're like over a second off. Should be very easy to find the time then, because if you're good in the 1600, like you have the precision it takes to find the time in the F4. It might be just like some kind of downforce knowledge or some notions that we can quickly fix. So that way. This is the ritual of my coaching sessions. I watch the driver for a few laps and I take as many notes as possible so that I know exactly how I'm going to help him find the lap times he needs as fast as possible. In this coaching session, he's going to find over a second per lap, and he's already a high-level driver, so make sure you watch this video until the end to understand all the steps that we took for him to understand this high downforce car, following the right steps to not develop any bad habit. As I watch him driving, I'm not only looking at the lines, I'm actually looking at the inputs because I can tell what the driver is even expecting from the car in terms of cornering, performance, and grip. The answer lies always in what happens in the driver's head even before the input happens. For example, what do you think he could have done better in this corner? What about this one? Have you seen the patterns? Okay, I know what's your issue. I'm writing it down because this I'm working on the new course and this is so cool. So your transition from low to high downforce car is clear. I can see that you're driving as if this is a Formula 1600. If I were to just vomit the words in your face right now, I would say, hey, the car has a lot of rotation available to you without so much influence of the pedals because of the extra downforce. The extra downforce forces the car down against the track. There's already a lot of load, so you actually need less influence of the pedals. That's one way of saying it. The other way of saying it is, I feel that you're not turning the steering enough, but you just tried turning the steering a little bit more and you just spun. So it's not a single solution, it's a collection of solutions that come together. The first thing is, today, the objective is I want you to steer more. But for you to steer more without spinning, you're gonna have to also compensate your pedal work. Again, I want you to steer more, but there's too much front grip. So if there's too much front grip because of the downforce, because of the front wing, then you have to compensate that by having more weight being transferred more quickly to the rear tires. That's essentially the best way to describe like the solution for you to transition from a Formula 1600 to a Formula 4. So let's try driving a few more laps with the intention of turning more the steering. And if you notice that the car is getting a little bit too much front bite, it's because there's still too much weight on the front. Not too much weight because you have a bad habit of trail braking too much. No, it's because there's a front wing in it. And that front wing already gives the front tires so much grip that now the baseline weight should go backwards a little bit compared to how much we need to keep the fronts loaded in the 1600. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try that. And on his first try, you can already see the difference. Damn. But then, he made the mistake of adding the steering after he got back on power, not before. You can turn even more mid-corner, like before you get back on power. Right now, you added more steering when you were already adding too much throttle, so you lifted the front too much. That's why you got the understeer. But like before you got on throttle, that you want to turn more the steering. Like I told him, only more steering is not going to be enough. He also has to compensate for the extra front grip with the pedals. You see? Like the fronts are there. Like even with no brakes, the fronts go. So you have to compensate for that behavior, especially on Chevy corner, by probably even already touching the throttle at 10%.
I think I just feel that extra grip and I get scared that it's going to just oversteer, that it's too much grip.
Yeah, but you have the control on the pedals, remember. So like if you just release the brakes or touch the throttle, you can always cancel out the oversteer and induce understeer instead. If you fear oversteer, touch the throttle. Now he knows. He can always correct oversteer with a little bit of throttle. And he can do this easily. There you go, there you go. Completely canceled out. Zero oversteer. Be careful though. You can only use the throttle for correction of an oversteer. If you do it too early without an oversteer, you're actually gonna cause understeer instead. You see there, you got on throttle as a prevention and it ended up inducing maybe a little bit too much understeer. So like, you see that it's gonna be very sensitive to 0 to 5% throttle. Depending on the corner, depending on the engine braking, you're gonna have to maybe trail brake or maybe go a little bit on maintenance throttle. Depends a lot on the corner. See, high speed stuff, because of this setup, it's actually understeer, so you don't have to worry about it. Nice, beautiful.
Yeah, that's a different thing with this car is that I can't go full throttle all the time. I'm used to with the lower powered cars, just 100%.
Ah, yeah.
This one, I gotta manage it a little bit more.
Not enough steering there. Mid corner. I can smell the fear of turning.
Especially in that corner.
Yeah.
That corner I've never felt comfortable doing.
Yeah, so in this case, for example, the oversteer happened on turn N. So that means that the brake release was not fast enough. You see, the whole responsibility of the balance of this car, not the grip usage, the balance, are the pedals. So you turning the steering or not will determine whether you are using the grip available. And your pedals will determine the balance, whether you're gonna oversteer or understeer. Yeah, nice. It was a little bit too much. You see how you quickly went from over to under? You're gonna gain the precision over time. But now I can see that you're transferring the responsibility of the balance to the pedals. Nice. It's a lot more active too. It's a lot more fun to watch.
Yeah, it's a lot more involved, this car. You gotta think about a few more things. And then with everything happening so much faster, it's...
Imagine a Formula 3.
Yeah. I bought that first and I was like, no, that's too much. It feels easy because you have so much downforce. It's like, oh yeah, I can drive this car. And then you see guys are doing 3-4 seconds faster than you. Like, okay.
Yeah. Nice. You can turn probably like 5 degrees more. I just feel like it was not there yet. Release brakes earlier. Nice. So funny how like I feel like this was the easiest coaching session the whole day, because it was so clear, like the whole transition, exactly what was missing, and you're like immediately applying it to like you're very good. Nice, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, really good, man, really good. And then you see how sensitive this car is to minimum pedal inputs, right? Like 1% to 3% braking is gonna make a difference, and 1% to 3% throttle is gonna make a difference. Yeah, on that last corner, turn 3, you need like 1% brakes for like 0.2 of a second longer. Nice. That's it. That's it.
Feels like you get more grip and if you're actually accelerating through there, which is kind of counterintuitive with how much of a crust there is there.
Yeah, it's because there was a excessive grip on the fronts and you're just borrowing it and giving it to the rears now. And also, like, high downforce cars tend to negate elevation changes a lot because there's so much air pushing the car down. Nice, perfect. I'm just impressed how fast you just do it. I was smelling the fear of turning the steering. And that's gone. Yeah, I saw that you were like, okay, let's just see what happens.
Joy of being on a simulator.
Yeah. I've spun like that in real life in a Formula 4. I was like, let's see what happens. Oops. Try to really get the first curve early on turn 1. Yeah, you see you can probably tray brake even less there. Careful with the initial turn in. Initial turn in should be almost non-existent. I don't want to notice where you started turning in. Yeah, that's it. And then mid corner you can turn more. Nice. Beautiful. Nice. It even feels like you're abusing the front tires, but it's just that this car likes a lot of scrub. It's a very light car. Now you can see him getting used to trusting the front downforce and steering more and more while using the pedals only to control the balance. But sometimes the habits are just too strong and he needs a little bit more time to adjust to it.
Forgot to steer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just the steering wasn't there. Formula 1600 habits. I'm thinking like, yeah, so you have two choices on that hairpin. You either turn in where you did, but you have to really drop the brakes and turn aggressively, or you do a little bit more V-shape approach, like turning in a little bit earlier than that. I'm not really sure exactly what's the best solution to what happened, because again, this car has downforce, but it's still not so much downforce. It definitely has more downforce than a 1600. That kind of spin there is because maybe you were trying to get the apex using the pedals, not the steering. I would say that's the simplest way of explaining it. Yeah, look at the difference when you switch from pedals to steering. Beautiful. Yeah. This car also has a lot of engine braking, so you have to remember that, like, if you're going to third gear to the hairpin and the RPMs are pretty high, you need even more pedal work to compensate for it. Start this corner earlier. I think you're turning in a little bit too late, which is forcing you to flick the steering. Now, here's a very good example of how dangerous it is when you hesitate to rotate the car right before the apex. If you don't rotate the car where the car can do it, you will just go off after. Yeah, you need to commit on that corner as much as possible to get like a lot of steering before you hit the apex. Because after the second half of that corner is actually a little bit flatter, there's less grip compared to the entry. So make sure you get that rotation done by the time you hit that tip. And as we get overwhelmed thinking a lot about turn in and mid corner, sometimes we forget to maximize the braking. Yeah, I think what missed there was the initial braking. You were kind of like hesitant, maybe because you're braking on top of the curb. But the car can stop a little bit more on the initial braking there. Just like 10% more brakes should have been enough to stop the car properly. Nice. Imagine like the front wing is 5% braking on the front tires. It's always that extra 5% like grip. Brake a little bit harder initially into 5. Really feel the bite. See? Boom. Ooh, you just needed the throttle there. Your right foot has to be ready all the time. Nice. And here's an example of using the throttle for balance, but doing it a little bit too much. Yeah, a little bit too much maintenance there. Like the throttle should vary between 0 and 10%. You went to like 40, that induces too much understeer. And again, here's one more example of hesitation to rotate the car mid-corner, causing a spin or crash on exit. Yeah, be careful with on Chevy, you will definitely need to use the throttle early. Like there, it's because the thing is, here in this corner, let's say you turn too much the steering and you use 50% throttle. So you induce a lot of understeer, you use the fronts very well, but you're not using the rears. What you did here, actually you did use the front, you did use the throttle, like, but on corner entry, you got a little bit too much oversteer. And what happens when you get too much oversteer is that because now you're not steering anymore, you're actually underusing the front tires and the car is going a little bit wide. So make sure that you're using the pedal corrections in such a way that you still turn the steering very well, which is the biggest difference between the Formula 4 and the 1600. The 1600, on the whole of the corner entry, we're keeping the steering straight. Here, we want to correct the balance while still turning into the corner. We're not going to do straight steering turn into this corner. Like high downforce cars don't like that. Ideal turn in steering for MX-5, straight, the whole entry. Ideal turn in to 1600, straight. But as soon as you get F4, radicals, and all those like higher downforce cars, you get more grip if you adjust the pedal in such a way where you're still actually adding steering into the corner. In this example here, you had your steering straight for too long, meaning there was still too much weight on the front tires through the pedals. So you just needed to release the brakes earlier. And you see, like you just needed the throttle like a fraction of a second earlier. What did this is one I would say this is like the only corner where you have to use the maintenance throttle in a prevention way, like in a preemptive way, because there's no grip on entry. And here's the fun thing about elevation changes, right? On a low downforce car, the elevation changes account for pretty much like all the grip you have. So if you have a big crest, your grip goes from 100 to 0. But this car on a flat surface has technically 150% grip because there's the 50% downforce. So when you go through a crest, your grip goes down from 150% to 50%. Even if it's a very aggressive crest, there's going to be some grip coming from the downforce. So that means the front tires will always be very bitey. So the solution here is really to be ready that the car will oversteer on turn in, and you will need definitely to touch that 20% throttle quite early compared to other corners. Because I saw that there you did it as a correction, but that was already too late. Yeah, there you go. High downforce cars 101. Really good stuff. I think you understood it. Now it's just a matter of getting used to it. I can see that from time to time you're still getting back to turning the car solely with the brakes. Just remember there's a front wing. Just imagine when you put your hands out the window in a car and the wind pushes your hand down, right? So that's exactly what the wing does to the front tires. In order to be able to turn the steering, shift the weight back to the rears, and you're good to go.
Yeah, definitely things I can work on. Just got to keep them in the front of my mind for a day or two, and hopefully they'll all click.
Thanks for the trust.
Yeah, have a good one. Yeah.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon. If you're a racing driver, you probably don't know what is actually slowing you down. You're watching on boards, you're doing laps, you're trying everything. But without a clear system, you waste time just reinforcing your bad driving habits. The Motor Racing Checklist is my complete online course that gives you a step-by-step plan to fix your technique and gain real performance in the car. Our Almeida Racing Academy has over 11,000 drivers. Go through it just once, you will feel the difference. And if you don't improve, I'll give you your money back.